Oh, this is a great point. Do you know why I have to use a private jet? Because Congress made it mandatory.
Okay. In April 5th, well, we didn't make it mandatory that you go to UFC games with Mel Gibson.
Are you telling me I can't go home?
You got to use some judgment here.
Welcome to Doublespeak. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on a disturbing pattern of hypocrisy and alleged entitlement at the highest levels of our political system. It's a pattern where the very individuals who rail against government waste and the deep state are caught red-handed, seemingly indulging in the very perks they condemn. Our story begins with Kash Patel, a figure who rose to prominence railing against what he called government gangsters. For years, Patel was obsessed with the alleged misuse of taxpayer-funded resources, particularly government jets, by former FBI Director Chris Wray. He demanded accountability, suggesting Wray was a government gangster for his travel habits. But then, the script flipped dramatically.
Chris Wray doesn't need a government-funded G5 jet to go to vacation. Maybe we ground that plane. $15,000 every time it takes off. Just a thought.
Go take their money. Chris Wray doesn't need a private jet.
We're not the guys running around on private jets. And somebody maybe in Congress should ask for how many flights on a private jet Director Comey took, or my predecessor Director Wray took, and how many personal trips they took.
Public flight logs and social media posts revealed Kash Patel himself using a taxpayer-funded government jet for a personal trip. He was seen at a Penn State sporting event, supporting his country singer girlfriend, Alexis Wilkins. Later that same night, the jet flew from Pennsylvania to Nashville, where his girlfriend lives. Now, it's true that FBI directors are legally required to use government planes for security. Patel himself raised this point when pressed on his jet usage. But the glaring question remains, is a mandated security requirement an excuse for using a taxpayer-funded asset for what appears to be leisure travel, especially when you've publicly demonized others for similar actions? This looks like a blatant contradiction, but this isn't an isolated incident.
Don't knock it until you try it. That's what I say about private jets. The use of government jets for personal travel by former FBI director was sort of an obsession of Patel's for years. In 2023, Patel called former director Chris Wray a, quote, government gangster for his jet usage, which is why it was surprising to see Patel repost this photo on Sunday of him in his FBI-branded hoodie out on a date with his country singer girlfriend, Alexis Wilkins. Now, Wilkins was performing at a Penn State sporting event on Saturday. And if you're wondering how Kash Patel got there to support her, well, public flight logs show he took a taxpayer-funded government jet. Later that night, that same jet flew from Pennsylvania to Nashville, where Patel's girlfriend lives. Now, I should note, FBI directors are required by law to use government planes for security purposes. It's a point Patel raised in May when Senate Democrats last inquired about his jet usage.
Oh, this is a great point. Do you know why I have to use a private jet? Because Congress made it mandatory.
Okay. In April 5th, well, we didn't make it mandatory that you go to UFC games with Mel Gibson.
Are you telling me I can't go home?
You got to use some judgment here.
This alleged pattern of entitlement extends far beyond one individual. We've seen other figures from the Trump administration benefiting from what can only be described as lavish government perks. Take Kristi Noem, for instance, who reportedly spent over $172 million in private jets and enjoyed rent-free living in a Coast Guard commandant's house, even after allegedly using taxpayer funds for extravagant renovations in the governor's mansion during her previous role. Stephen Miller, Marco Rubio, and others have reportedly been living in luxury homes meant for generals on military bases, citing security, despite already having personal security details. These aren't just perks. They represent a significant departure from past norms for these positions.
Patel's lack of judgment when using a taxpayer-funded plane for private excursions during a government shutdown on the eve of SNAP benefits running out is really just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, we have seen members of the Trump administration taking advantage of government perks, like DHS Secretary Kristi Noem, who spent more than $172 million on private jets. Now The Atlantic is reporting that officials like Stephen Miller, Noem, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, and others are living in homes meant for generals on military bases. They say it's for security reasons, though they already have personal security details, and in the past, those people with those jobs didn't occupy these homes. They all seem to be taking Trump's cues. They can help themselves to the public till. Charles Blow is a journalist and author of the Blow the Stack Substack. Michelle Goldberg is an opinion columnist in the New York Times, and they join me now. Charles, I'm struck that in the first term, Tom Price, who's their Secretary of HHS, was actually brought down.
Journalists Charles Blow and Michelle Goldberg have eloquently described this as a golden age of corruption. They argue that the sheer volume of scandals under the previous administration has effectively desensitized the public.
Flying around on a private jet, that there's this sort of level of scandal that used to exist that feels like it no longer does. Why do you think that is? Why have we found ourselves in this kind of golden age of corruption?
Well, I mean, mostly it's because Donald Trump has set the bar so high or low, depending on how you want to describe it, that nothing really registers anymore. But it also underscores that what these people were complaining about was not something that they opposed on principle, but rather something that they were jealous of. They were never really on principle against indoctrination. They just wanted to do it themselves and more. They were never really against weaponizing the Justice Department. They just wanted to do it themselves and more. They were never against grift. They just wanted to do it themselves and more. And the public, sadly, has gotten used to this kind of behavior from this administration. And because there's so much coming at you in every possible way, including whether or not we will even have a fair election in 2026 and whether or not there will be military at those polling stations in 2026, that you have to put things in some sort of order of outrage. And this begins to look like a lesser thing on that list of things to be outraged about.
Nothing truly registers anymore. Their piercing analysis suggests that what figures like Patel and others were truly complaining about wasn't the principle of government excess or weaponizing institutions. No, it appears they were simply jealous. They weren't against the grift. They just wanted to do it themselves, and more. The public, sadly, has grown accustomed to this behavior. With so much political chaos, scandal, and even threats to our democratic process, the misuse of government jets or luxury housing starts to feel like a lesser outrage on a very long list. Michelle Goldberg points out that the fish rots from the head. This culture of graft and expropriation, she argues, is seen as admirable within this political camp. It's almost a cliche to say, every accusation is a confession, but in this context, it feels chillingly accurate. They project faults onto their enemies, then use those same faults to justify their own, often far worse, misdeeds. Charles Blow expands on this, suggesting that at the end of empire, looting becomes part of the process. The amassing of wealth and the collection of vast sums by a very few do not bode well for the rest of us. It points to a deep decline. And perhaps most disturbingly, these figures don't seem to care how this looks to the voters. Even during a potential government shutdown, with crucial benefits like SNAP on the brink of expiring, there's no performance of even mild austerity. Instead, there's a retreat into metaphorical, and sometimes literal, bunkers, a complete detachment from the people they are supposed to serve. The Kash Patel incident, particularly, becomes a microcosm of this mindset, a casual disregard for optics, for public trust, and for the very principles they claim to uphold. This is not just hypocrisy, it's a symptom of a profound shift in political ethics, where accountability is dead and entitlement reigns supreme. What are your thoughts on this golden age of grift, and what it says about the state of our nation? Let us know in the comments below.